Objective 5 is learning this term absolute value. So we're going to be using absolute values in chapter 1, but we're going to use them as equations. So it's a good idea to have a basic understanding of what an absolute value is first. So an absolute value represents the absolute distance from a number on the number line to the origin. It's always positive. So for example, if I said, hey, what is the absolute value of 3? That would mean, what is the distance between 0 and 3 on the number line? Well, you'd say it's 3 units. So same thing, if I said, what's the absolute value of -3? So -3 is here, you'd still say that it's 3 units away from 0 on the number line. So no matter what you have inside the absolute value signs, whether it's a positive or negative number, the absolute value signs make it positive because it's a distance. For example, if I said, hey, how far is Caslow from Nelson? You would just say, oh, I should have given that. I have no idea how far it is, like 60 kilometers or something like that. Whereas if I said, how far is it to Trail? You'd be like, well, 72 kilometers. You wouldn't say -72 because it's in a southerly direction, right? It's just that distance away from your origin. So the easiest way to remember absolute values is that the absolute value signs, treat them like brackets, simplify inside of them first, and then when you do the action of taking the absolute value, it makes anything negative positive and anything positive stay positive. So let's look at some examples. So if I said find the absolute value of 121, well, the distance between 0 and 121 is 121. If I said find the absolute value of -3.4, well, the distance between 0 and -3.4 is 3.4, right? It makes it positive. Then we start trying to do tricky things like, what if I put a negative out front? You could think of this as -1 times the absolute value of writing weird things, absolute value of -8. So this would be -1 times, well, the absolute value of -8 is +8. And then -1 times 8 is -8. So we can get negative answers for expressions, right? If there's a negative sign out front, but it's the fact that we had to take the absolute value of -8 first before we multiplied it by -1. So that's why my answer came out negative. Lots of people look at this and they're like, oh, negative times a negative is a positive. I'm like, nope. You have to do the action of taking the absolute value first, and then you can times it by that -1 out front. All right, what about if we do crazy things like make them add? It would be take the absolute value of 3, so the absolute value of 3 is 3, and add to it the absolute value of -7, sorry, which is 7. So then 3 plus 7 is 10. Unfortunately, there is no way of checking absolute values on your calculator. There is, I mean, unless you have a super fancy calculator, they just assume that you can make anything positive, and so it's not something that you can plug in. And then this one, so treat the absolute value signs like brackets. So you do them what's inside first, and then you do their action last. So the first thing I'm going to do is -6 minus 4, which is -10. And then the absolute value of -10 is +10. And that's it. That is absolute values. Enjoy.